Well, Rick Nash is now a Broadway blue shirt. He's gone to the New York Rangers.
It exposes something pretty big in Columbus, that Scott Howson holds no respect in the NHL amongst players or teams, because they say Rick Nash could be the perennial power forward, goal scoring. Like they think he'll be a machine when he gets with a good center, something they never did in Columbus. And Howson did everything he could to alienate him, so that no movement clause just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, to the point where, sure, they got a first-round draft pick, but that might be 32nd overall next year, 30th overall, I guess. And I don't think that the three players they got are going to replace him. Howson ruined his own credibility in that matter on trade deadline, where he went out there and he blamed Rick Nash for the situation, essentially. And I think that led to nobody wanted to deal with Howson on Nash.
Well, it's a tremendous trade for the New York Rangers. They virtually give up nothing. I mean, you can always get a third line forward anywhere. They give up a couple of those, third or fourth line, whatever you want to have it. Now you got Rick Nash. I heard it said he was top 6. I think he's better than that. I think he's one of the elite players in the National Hockey League. You had the opportunity to see him play often. He's going to be a big, big part of the New York Rangers. You got Marian Gaborik on too. I mean, they wouldn't play together, I wouldn't think, because of their similarities in some of their styles. Both are prone to get a lot of breakaways. But wow, it gives them an awful lot of firepower. And what does that do? If anybody has an interest in buying a season ticket in Columbus, what is there to watch?
Nothing at all. It's been gutted. Last year, at least, they had Jeff Carter coming, who was going to play with Nash. It was very exciting. Steve Mason isn't exactly going to draw people into the building at this point, because they've gutted his confidence. Jack Johnson's there, but I don't think you can build around him. They didn't get Yakupov in the draft because they unfortunately didn't draft first overall. There's nothing there. Scott Howson, how he kept his job is beyond me, because he should have been fired late last season. He's probably the worst GM in the league. I don't think there's anything they can do unless one of those guys that they got from the Rangers, and I don't think it's going to be Dubinsky, I think it's going to be Anisimov, who's going to be the only guy to come through and do anything there. It's bad on so many levels for Scott Howson, and I think Columbus it's a hopeless cause for the next 3 or 4 years.
One thing, though, with the Nash trade, you got to remember, too, he had the no-trade clause. And when a player can go out and say, you can only trade me to these clubs, and he goes out and says, you can only trade me to the Rangers, that kind of leaves you in a tough spot.
The Flyers and Wings were both on the list. He couldn't go to Detroit because you play them 3 times at home or whatever it is, and 3 times on the road. But the Flyers just didn't want to. Darren Drager's reporting that Sean Couturier for Rick Nash 1-for-1 wasn't good enough. And Couturier, you get me started on him and Cheveldayoff, and I go off. But that tells you what the value was. There was not. The GMs are smart now. They didn't have to give up a lot to get him. There wasn't very much competition. The Penguins probably couldn't have afforded Nash. The Wings probably could, but they weren't going to trade within the division, and the Flyers waited it out to see what the Rangers were going to do. There wasn't enough of a pool of teams that could get them.
Great week for New York. They get Rick Nash, they get Ichiro Suzuki. Wow. All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We'll be back with a Major, Scott Taylor, after this on 360Winnipeg.ca.